Hey, this is the Nature Boy Ric Flair, and believe it or not, whether you like it or don't like it, learn to love it, because you have to listen to Wrestling is Real. It is the best thing going today. Woo!
The worldwide leader of podcasting excellence, the king of podcasts radio network proudly presents The Wrestling is Real podcast, because wrestling needs us.
And welcome to episode 859 of the Wrestling is Real podcast. This is KOP. Welcome you to another program here. kingofpodcasts.com is where you find it. And when I talked about after the recap of Forbidden Door, which you can find now at the website kingofpodcasts.com, or you can find on my YouTube channel at King of Podcasts, please subscribe to the channel, like, comment, and share as well, because I could really get the word out there. Working my way up to 500 subscribers. It's not much. I'm at 373 at the moment as I'm recording tonight. Coming up on July 4th. Happy 4th of July for all of you here in the States. Happy Canada Day for those of you that were celebrating in Canada a couple days ago. And, I don't know, happy Election Day in England? I don't know. Just putting the celebratory things aside. So bear with me on this controversial subject I'm going to barrel into tonight. Because I know when you look at the title, I know you're going to ask yourself, King of Podcasts. Maybe I've listened to you during about a good 858 episodes. Some of my P1s out there, you might have listened to these shows. And sometimes you ask yourself, where do I come off with these kind of tangents? Some of my historical backdrops. Like when I come through an historical account of talking about things, I get into this kind of trend here quite often when there are things not going great with a particular wrestling product in WWE, right? That's what I do. Because for those who do not remember history, we're doomed to repeat it. And as far as we have folks like Triple H, Shawn Michaels, Bruce Pritchard, Paul Heyman for that matter, that are working in the back right now, that would be the most formidable names in the creative process. While they might have a creative team of people from various backgrounds and storytelling of television series, that might be streaming or on cable at one point, or soap operas or wherever they came from, maybe even movies, wherever they came from, they're still at the behest of the idea makers that are not Vince McMahon or Pat Patterson. Okay. Because the people that are working right now they defy the stigma of sports entertainment. Let's just put it like that. What Vince McMahon created is not necessarily the tour de force that they want to do. They do not want to go sports entertainment. Now, the YS6 is sports entertainment. You might not think it's so, but it is. The Liv Morgan Dominic Mysterio storyline, more or less to be sports entertainment. I mean, these are normal trips that we normally would get. The spooky horror, out there, supernatural type of storylines, the romantic love triangle storylines. Yeah, this is typical in wrestling. But they also have to be good. The characters have to be believable. Like, you can go back and recreate movies and rehash storylines and recreate them for whatever kind of screen that you want. For the screen that's on social media for clips, or for the small screen for television, or for the big screen for movies. It works the same way. You can go back to stories and retell them and refabricate them and remake them. Sure you can. But it's still got to be good. And what we're getting right now is, I listen to a couple different podcasters now as of late. I do change around what I listen to. As of late, I'll give you this. Randomly listen to J&D from NY, 206, Wrestling Observer I regularly listen to. I catch a lot of the clips on YouTube. Post Wrestling every once in a while. Same thing with WrestleNomics. But more than anything now, I used to have the trend to listen to Don, Tony, and Kevin Castle recapping Raw and everything else they were doing. But since that show is broken up for a lot of reasons, I never went back to Don Tony, not because there was anything about him. It's just that, his presentation is going to be different than what I would normally be accustomed to because I want to move things along. Now, I haven't listened to him in a while, so I couldn't tell you. And I haven't seen any clips or anything that remind me to go find this show. Like even I had to learn that whole idea. Yeah, you better put some stuff out there so people recognize that you're out there. You're doing stuff. So social media clips, smart thing to do. At least I'm trying to do it. I'm trying. But what happens is, it is one of those things where I was so used to so many years wanting to listen to somebody recap Raw on Monday night. Sometimes it isn't the JD from NY. And for a while I was listening to it, but the thing is that, when some people are just very much overly positive, and to many points I might disagree with their commentary, which we all can do that because, again, we are at various ages and various mentalities of what we feel about in the wrestling industry. Like, again, I'm going to make my point that my fellow podcast wrestling brethren, I believe they're going to be wrong in many cases, or I might agree with them on maybe 30 to 40% of what they say, or their thoughts on how wrestling is, because many of my fellow podcast wrestling brethren are WWE minded, right? Because most of them will say that really that's the more dominant brand, which it is. I'm not disputing that. I'm not disrespecting it. But it's because of the fact they're the largest brand that they are always doing things better than everybody else, as that's a justification. When I really don't say it, it's that's such. Look, it's just like if you're going to a fast food chain, there's a certain quality that you expect from that big chain that you can go and find anywhere. And there's that thought process in sports where, if you find a team that has all the big superstars and they paid big money to bring them on board. I'm the kind of guy that likes Moneyball. I like to see a team from the farm system being brought up to become stars. Like, I like underdogs. I've always been an underdog myself. So when it comes to the secondary brands of professional wrestling, everything from AEW to TNA, which will be a point of focus tonight, MLW, NWA, Ring of Honor, those are my bags. It was always that way. I pay attention always as much to the World Class Championship Wrestling when I was growing up, or UWF when I was growing up, or NWA when I was growing up. There was a point where definitely WWE was the one and only that I actually watched, because that was what got me first into wrestling. More or less. About 80% of what I was watching was WWF. With a good portion of it, then after that would be like if I caught the 605 show on Saturdays on TBS. Or I caught somebody of the shows at night, whether it's Pro Wrestling This Week with Gordon Solie and, what was it, his name? Pittaccini? I forget his name. And then I would catch Glow or UWF or whatever else I could find at 11 o'clock at night on syndicated TV. On Channel 33 or, it was Channel 33 for the most part. Those were some fun days. Or I'd catch AWA on ESPN. It was one of those things where you just catch it on the weekdays, and that was fun to watch. But I want to make my point that I also study the craft of the booking that goes on in other territories and how sometimes that booking will be brought along to another territory. Okay. When Bill Watts moved from Mid-South and moved over to WCW, brought a certain type of thought process that he brought over here to WCW. Now, I didn't necessarily agree with it. Vince Russo taking his aspect of WWF and bringing it to WCW didn't necessarily work, but there were some certain aspects that I enjoy of it. Like, listen, I could disagree with the booking decisions that Vince Russo has all the time. It's not that some of his ideas are really good. And honestly, when I listen to him, Monday night booking after the fact, watching Raw, and he talks to Dr. Chris Featherstone on Sportskeeda, that show I've been listening to a lot. And I keep catching myself saying, well, Vince Russo wasn't the best booker in the world, but he does get an idea of what is right. But he's not the best person to do it either. But who is? Everybody struggles with doing the booking here. But I also detest when I hear people that kind of just have to be a bit of an apologist or start to say that, what WWE is doing is right. And thinking that what we've watched in the past pales in comparison to what we're watching now. When we see obvious favoritism, nepotism, we see obvious booking that is rehashed from somewhere else because I think somebody thought the idea that they took and used in 1999 or 2010 might work now. Let's just go back and use it again. Go back from the well. Let's just repost that one more time. It's been long enough. People won't remember AJ Styles, wearing a blue suit instead of a pink salmon suit like Mark Henry and taking out Cody Rhodes to get up into a 2-match feud for the world title, for the universal title against Cody Rhodes. Yeah, right? I mean, we can go ahead and let that slide. There's just things that happen here where what Triple H inherited. I mean, look, of the main event storyline, let's forget about everything else that's been brought in. The Bloodline storyline has been, maybe not so much at this point, excellent. Everything involving Roman Reigns and the Usos, everything with Sami Zayn, excellent. Solo Sikoa, involvement as the enforcer, excellent. But then the Bloodline storyline took a turn because they want to go and continue this Bloodline storyline for some way. I get it. But after Roman takes time off and Solo goes and becomes a mutiny, and now he has culminated it completely, incorporating new members to the pseudo bloodline, the bootleg bloodline. No problem with Tonga Loa or Tama Tonga coming into the faction. But what have they done so far? They haven't won anything. The bloodline, why? Because they were so prominent, is because Roman Reigns was we were such in awe of Roman Reigns because, first of all, he's a specimen. He's a mastodon. This guy, great in the ring, great heel heat, great on the mic. Okay. The Usos accompanying him and the whole setup with the brothers and the animosity between each other was magic, was drama at its best, honestly. I mean, it's Emmy Award winning good. I really felt that way. The Sami Zayn stuff, same thing. But then we're going to, try to do some of that kind of dramatic stuff with Alpha Academy and then just kind of like completely miss the mark in so many ways. Now, credit, the booking does try to go ahead and incorporate several different angles intertwined to other factions. I can appreciate that, right? But still, it's convoluted. It's not working. Coming into question some of the airtime that certain stars get that don't really need it is the other part too. I mean, look, when I talked about WCW, the 83 weeks moment, when I went back to that a few weeks ago, right, and I pulled that story together, again, all I can think about is just reflecting back at some of the things that are being mistakes right now. So last week, I made my point. It's a WCW 83 weeks moment right now. And I think about it. When I look at stars like, and I'm saying stars, not with quotes, I'm like, I can't even really consider them to be WWE superstars. Laya Valkyria, Alba Fire, Aladon. Listen, they're talented. But we're talking about WWE talent. We're talking about the high-level main roster talent. When I look at DIY, nothing against them. They're talented. But are they WWE talent? The caliber, the bar is lowered for them because they don't have the sports entertainment value. They don't have character development to a T. We don't have any of that with them. Drew McIntyre, CM Punk, Cody Rhodes, Kevin Owens, Randy Orton. I mean, they all, of the old guard, basically, Sheamus, right? The veterans that we have right now. And so much being done with them with so many different gimmicks and storylines. Seth Rollins. They all have so many different things we can identify them by and recognize them for. The stars are trying to bring up into the fold that were part of that NXT 2019, or the black and yellow era that certain fans right now, including my fellow podcast wrestling brethren, have always been in awe of, right? The same group, mind you, that did not beat AEW Dynamite for another, 60 some odd weeks in the same way. Now, you want to make the excuse, remember, they were not on, they were, the developmental system. Well, no, they were not. Like right now, they're developmental, but at the time that the black and gold was in play, it was not developmental. When you were pillaging rosters, because sometimes those words kind of come together, but that's not what I meant here. So Okay. Pillaging rosters from Ring of Honor, from TNA, and bringing those stars into the fold to bolster over there, because Triple H, that was his thought process. Let's bring in some free agents of people that he really liked out there and just polish them. Because it was much easier to do that to stars that have so much time. You know, they have so much on their bump card, as Jim Ross likes to put it. And so he had that. And that was when he wanted to prefer, like, we could just go ahead and just take some of these stars that are from the independents, scout them, bring them in here quickly, and polish them up. But the lesson that wasn't learned was they don't work for the main roster. You make them work for the main roster now because Triple H is in charge. But is it really paying off? It's just filler for what people are really care about. When we talk about the ratings that are going on for various storylines right now, okay, it's probably three things. It's Cody and it's CM Punk and Drew McIntyre. It's the Bloodline. Anything with Cody Rhodes, Kevin Owens, and Randy Orton, or it's the Wyatt Six. Those three things, in no particular order. So if they're going to go ahead and tell me that of all those storylines right there, those are the draws of what Vince brought in. Of what Vince brought in and curated and created for all these years. It's nothing to do necessarily with what has been done by Triple H of the other talent. Your Ilya Dragunovs, your Braun Breakers, your Karrion Crosses, your LA Knights. They're just filler. And you can create the smoke and mirrors. And even Jey Uso, we should put in that mix of the veteran talent. By the way, being underused. But that's another thing. It also goes into what I call, what is really and essentially the Bruce Prichard paradox. Because I honestly feel like, for whatever reason, there are certain stars that don't get the rub. They just kind of get held in the back, and they're not made a big deal. Okay? For whatever reason. I don't know, but that's where I'm at right now with what I see. And I think of TNA and certain stars they did push down our throats that never really necessarily worked out well, and it didn't do much for us. And remember, this was the time when the TNA, Hogan and Bischoff were back in. Dixie Carter brought them back in. But there again, Bischoff was a consultant. Hulk Hogan has creative control once again. And Bruce Pritchard was brought in to run the pencil, to run the booking, and kept moving up in the company. And it led to certain particular booking decisions that I don't necessarily find in favor. And it was a bit of a train wreck once again. And Russo was part of it. And then he was gone. Remember, this was after Russo left. He was like out of the whole picture. And things were going okay. He did kind of spike a rating. But then, of course, Eric Bischoff and Vince Russo and they folks and Dixie Carter. Oh, let's do Monday nights. Let's do Monday night. Let's go head to head. Impact versus Raw. And that was a mistake. When that show never needed to leave on Thursday nights. And as a result, there was another TV deal that got lost. Because TNA would eventually lose their deal to Spike. No more Spike TV drops. And it's taken forever for this company to come back to its good graces to where it is. Again, credit to Scott D'Amore and the Anthem Entertainment Group for what they've done to rehabilitate this brand. Like, it was really... what a mess that was left. They almost did not survive. It was tough to see how much was going on with them when they were left with the Pursuit channel to be on, a hunting channel on Friday nights. They had no other place to go. Like, those are the last legs. On Pop TV, Destination America, they were struggling. That was rough. But let's go ahead and fast forward. I feel like some of the same decisions are being done today. And I'm going to go ahead and go by a number of storylines and tell you why I think they kind of resemble storylines that were being booked in TNA of 2010 and 2011 by Bruce Prichard. I put it in here. And by the way, it's in the description. You want to read it? Go right ahead. It's a nice little read. So as I say, In defiance of the long-standing stigma of sports entertainment, I wanted to go and look at the strikingly similar booking patterns of Bruce Pritchard in TNA in 2010. So he was head writer in 2011 and 2012, but he was in there already in 2010. Like, he was already brought into the mix. So when I bring up the Bloodline and their current storyline with Cody, Rhodes, Randy Orton, and Kevin Owens, which, by the way, we're going to also coincide this with the fact that Money in the Bank is this weekend. And that is a match that's coming up this weekend. And we don't know if the Bloodline is going under Freebird rules. They haven't said that yet. No one has said anything about that yet, but we have not heard anything that says that under Freebird rules are we going to see 3 of the 4 members of the Bloodline. But who are those going to be? I need to find that out. So either Solo Sikoa, Tama Tonga, Tongaloa, or Jacob Fatu. I'm going to guess. Man, I don't know. I'm guessing Jacob Fatu doesn't get in this match. I'm guessing a Solo, Tama, and Tonga. That's it. I mean, I think Jacob Fatu should be in it, but I guess he's the enforcers. They're not going to bring him in right away. Again, they have brought him in slowly, and he's done a few things so far, but they have really kept a tie on him. They don't want to go. They've kept him under wraps. He has not done that much. Just enough to get an impact out there, but he hasn't had a chance to talk, except to acknowledge Solo Sikoa, and the focus wasn't even on the Bloodline members itself, except for Solo Sikoa confronting Paul Heyman on Friday night, where Paul Heyman kind of has a Sami Zayn moment where he doesn't acknowledge Solo Sikoa as the tribal chief. Got it. Okay. That was being set up for a long time. And Paul Heyman now being eliminated and neutralized. Okay, people were asking about, well, then who's going to be the new wise man? They feel like they're going to have somebody that's going to take that role. Some people have talked about who it could be. Armando Alejandro Estrada has been said because, of course, of his relationship with Umaga back in the day. It's been a long time, though. You could say, I mean, I could see Haku coming back, the former Ming. I could see him coming back. Obviously, the father of Tama Tonga Tongaloa, and then if Hikuleo comes in and he comes in with a different name, I could see that. But either which way, that's the most significant thing that the Bloodline's done so far. The current bootleg Bloodline is they took out Paul Heyman, so no more wise man. But the faction is now complete. You now have 4 members. And Solo Sikoa is now calling himself tribal chief, but without a wise man to go along. And nobody putting the beads around his neck. So now we're at the point where now we need to see, are they going to actually beat Cody, Randy, and Kevin? If I'm going to be booking Money in the Bank this weekend, you have to think that the Bloodline has to win. Like, what are we doing here? If the Bloodline is going to be dominant right now, they don't have any belts. They're not going after any belts. I guess eventually Solo Sikoa is going to take on Cody Rhodes for the title, but they need to go and build it up. So they build up the Bloodline as a faction and try to get heat on him by now taking out Paul Heyman, who was a heel. And apparently now Paul Heyman's a face. Okay. But people cared because they care about Roman Reigns. But remember, the focus of the heat on the story of this Bloodline storyline is the fact that Roman's not there. Like, more than anything, all we have is something about Solo. It's something about Tama or Tonga, and it's something about Jacob. It's about the fact that Roman's not there. And Solo is doing this. So that's all that's being said about it. No one else is saying anything else. So for the Bloodline to be significant, they have to win this weekend. They have to beat Cody, Randy, and Kevin. Otherwise, what importance is the Bloodline? They're just afterthoughts. They're just not doing anything at all. So we need to get that to happen first. We need to go and see that happen so we can actually care. So we can honestly see something that makes us clearly notice that there's an important storyline to this. Now, back to my point. Why do I say the Bloodline, the way that they look at? Because they remind me of the feud between Immortal and Fortune. So Hogan and Bischoff had their group, right? And then there was Fortune, that was AJ Styles, Kazarian, Christopher Daniels, among others in the group. So Immortal and Fortune. Remember that in TNA? And we had EV 2.0. Oh my God, that's going back a while. Either which way. The idea was Fortune was going to be the new Four Horsemen. And the AJ Styles was compared to Arn Anderson, Frankie Kazarian to Barry Windham, Roode and Storm to Ole Anderson and Tully Blanchard, and Desmond Wolfe to Lex Luger. So it was a 5-person group. And then you had the group Immortal, right? And Immortal was Hulk Hogan, Eric Bischoff, Jeff Jarrett, and Abyss, and Jeff Hardy. That was Immortal. Man, I have not forgotten about that. And you think of some of the stars they had in here that remind me so much of what WWE is right now, what TNA was. D'Angelo De Niro makes me think of LA Knight. It didn't really make much of a difference about, D'Angelo De Niro, right? The Pope. But really, LA Knight is the Pope. Promo, good talker. But how much did D'Angelo De Niro do? Compared to how it was with LA Knight. I remember those guys were feuding with each other in NWA Power. That tells you how far back we go, right? And then Douglas Williams. Douglas Williams reminds me a whole lot of, Sheamus or Gunther for that matter. Then you had Matt Morgan, part of all this thing right here. Matt Morgan reminds me of Braun Breaker. Like, there's just something that kind of makes me feel like these certain particular stars that just kind of feel like if this was Bruce's working right here, 2010, 2011, and this was like, it's like he's just recreating these stars and putting it back into the same mix here. And I was like, man, I'm just not into this. And then EV 2.0. Okay. LWO reminds me of EV 2.0. Or even like, say Final Testament. EV 2.0 was Brian Kendrick, Raven, Rhino, Sabu, and Stevie Richards. It's like, you just put a faction together, And LWO is the same thing. It's just kind of like just a makeshift. But they never really did anything. There wasn't anything really special. So like the mid-card stars, they just had stuff that they were doing over there, and they were just kind of like, whatever. It's kind of just in the mix. And then I just think about, from there we have that comparison. The other comparison I have is when I look at Drew McIntyre and CM Punk on the almost like this bloodthirsty rivalry, like how far they're going along, where they've talked about things personally, when it comes to like the personal vitriol between them, it almost makes you feel like Kurt Angle versus Jeff Jarrett. Like the level of vitriol and hatred that they had for each other, and like how much they're putting themselves through to like for hating each other. Like, I'm surprised there's not like an AJ Lee that comes into the mix and Drew McIntyre then attacks. Like it was something like that. I mean, or that, Drew McIntyre dated AJ Lee or took AJ Lee away from her. It's like, it's that kind of thing. But it feels like that too. And I'm not like much into that either. Another one is when we had Immortal and Fortune, and then like Immortal was being finally eliminated as a faction in TNA. Hulk Hogan led it. So think of The Rock. And Roman Reigns is Sting. And Sting, just like he had to go ahead and take down the NWO initially, Roman Reigns is made here to go ahead and take down The Rock. It feels like that. And of course, that match for Sting and Hogan was at Bound for Glory 2011, and Sting won. At the same time, we also had the Aces and Eights. They used to target TNA wrestlers. See, the other thing was targeting wrestlers, creating an atmosphere of paranoia and uncertainty. So initially, right, Aces and Eights, remember, we didn't know who they were. because they were covered up. They were under disguise, right? And over several months, there were people being taken out. And so far, the Wyatt Six has taken out Chad Gable, but unfortunately, Chad Gable bounced right back in 2 weeks. And he's in the Money in the Bank ladder match this weekend. But then the other part of the Aces and Eights angle, the invasion angle of Aces and Eights, reminds me of Wyatt Six. But even Wyatt Six we can use for not somebody else. But Aces and Eights, I have said it already time and time again, feels like Judgment Day. Changing where they had groups leaders changing across, and Judgment Day gives me that kind of feel. The clubhouse, like it just feels okay, and they're wearing like certain jackets, like it's just, and they had the prospects. Like Garrett Bischoff, remember that? Oh my goodness, man! I mean, I remember all this stuff, Aces and Eights. And it's hilarious to remember all this stuff because Aces and Eights, like we remember it fondly as a train wreck because it was. Aces and Eights was absolutely a deal of pure train wreck when they did that in TNA. It totally was. And so when I remember the name with who they had when they had Aces and Eights, and they brought in people, Jesse Goddard. No, I'm sorry, it was Garrett Bischoff and Wes Briscoe. That's right. That's right. Oh my goodness, man! So like Carlito and Jada McDonough feel like Garrett Bischoff and Wes Briscoe. Okay. And again, Aces and Eights might have run things the way they set it up. It was so caught up in the whole Sons of Anarchy thing at the time. That's exactly why they did that. And they thought it was such a good idea. And then if I want to go ahead and use Wyatt Six, I can also remember them. Remember them in TNA? Do we need to remember that too? These are like some of the worst factions and ideas that was in TNA, okay? It really was. Or they. Wasn't it they? Because they was Immortal, wasn't it? I think that's what it was. I think they ended up becoming Immortal. I remember all this stuff. This is wild, but this is exactly what it was. And this was all Bruce Pritchard. And Bruce Pritchard is definitely well entrenched and involved right now in the company. Remember, he came in as an executive director back in 2019? And this was after they tried to have Eric Bischoff and Paul Heyman executive direct separately Raw and SmackDown. Remember we were going to do that? So Vince was going to take a step back. And he was going to let Eric Bischoff and Paul Heyman run individual shows. Paul Heyman on Raw. Eric Bischoff never ran SmackDown. It never happened. But that was the original idea, remember? And it didn't happen. So at the moment now, Bruce Pritchard can go ahead and, give revisionist history, what he's doing right now, over, doing what some of the wrestled with, and he can still do his stuff that he does right now. Good for him. But at the moment, he is set up where he's doing right now. So again, he's executive director currently right now in the company, and he's still very much an important connection when it comes to what he's doing right now altogether. And we never really talked about the fact that Bruce Pritchard still has a whole lot of pull when it comes to what happens in NXT and what happens on Raw and SmackDown. But it's never really been defined who's handling WWE creative right now. Like we know that Triple H is, heads all, and obviously he's the final say on the things now, it looks like. But we don't know who is right now as we speak. Like, I don't think anybody really knows what that is right now. While there are writers and other people that are working right now for the WWE right now, let's just keep this in mind too, of some of the names that worked in TNA as well, that might take some of these ideas and bring them into the current day. Okay. Jimmy Borash is Senior Director of Content and Development. He was all over TNA back in the day. Let's just make that point across too. Drake Maverick is writing for Raw, the former Rockstar Spud. Okay, let's keep that in mind too. And let's keep in mind we have a whole bunch of people from TNA that are also part of what TNA was doing, back in the day when it comes to producing or being, agents now these days. You have Petey Williams, Robert Roode, Shane Helms, who spent a time over there, among others. So that's among the other people that are in the whole space right now. But it still comes down to the fact that it wasn't necessarily good. That's the part I need to make a point of. When I think of other parts that are being done right now during the Bruce Pritchard era, Austin Aries, remember he became like this breakout star and they were showcasing him and making a big thing about it. But, we liked him, but he really didn't have much more of anything after that. I mean, Austin Aries was really good. I don't know what happened, but he just dropped off the map. Out of TNA and then out of mind. And we really never heard more of Austin Aries after that. It was just a shame. Him working with Bobby Roode and their fight for the TNA World Heavyweight Championship was great stuff. In a way, I feel like that's like Carmelo Hayes and Trick Williams. And right now, Austin Aries is Trick Williams. And then I look at NXT. And I feel like NXT is like what TNA had with Gut Check. Remember Gut Check? Everything feels the same like it was before. But TNA was a substandard brand. Which, by the way, the stars and the people they had over there, they had talent over there. But again, same thing. The certain level of character development and what was being done with these stars to kind of put them up and forward. And the cringeworthiness we had of certain stars over here. Same thing too. Now, we know this about all the men's divisions. I haven't talked about anything about the women's division. Because I'm not going to say anything about the women's division because the women's division was hot. The Knockouts division was fun. They had a lot of good stars over there. Like if you look at the graphic I put up for this week and you see the certain stars they had at that time of that main roster in TNA, that's some pretty good names. You had Tara, you had the Beautiful People, that was important. And you had others. But for the most part, it's like history has repeated itself. And there's just certain things that are being done right now that I just don't feel like is mattering much. And it's a shame. Because we have stars right now that are taking up time for other stars that should be on that main roster, that should be doing something more. Because right now, it's just not working, okay? It's not working for me. When you look at the roster they have right now, at the moment, on the main roster, if I look on the Raw roster, look, Vince Russo constantly has to talk about the fact that Sami Zayn just looks like a slob out there. Because he just looks, shaggy. Like a shaggy hair, shaggy beard. Doesn't really present himself like a champion. But that's just because that's who he's been all this time. Doesn't come to the level where Damian Priest looks like a champion. Damian Priest, of everything that's been done right now in the booking process, Damian Priest has been booked very well. And what needs to happen right now, especially when it comes to Money in the Bank, they need to go ahead and have him split off. Like if they're already setting that up right now with Finn Balor already confronting him, good. Because Judgment Day is an anchor. Now, if you want to make something interesting, okay, well then let Finn Balor break off of the Judgment Day. And let Judgment Day just, just piss away. You can break that up right now. That faction doesn't need to be anything anymore. We can just let that whole thing fizzle. The fact that JD McDonough and Finn Balor beat Awesome Truth to become World Tag Team Champions, those are adornments. It's just ornaments. They don't matter. It doesn't matter. When you look at the stars they're putting up now for the Money in the Bank ladder match, of who they think, and some of those stars they think are important enough to put into this Money in the Bank ladder match, amongst the stars they already have on the roster that could be up there. So coming up, earning the World Heavyweight title is going to be Damian Priest and Seth Rollins. Damian Priest, I expect to win. And I think there'll be some kind of animosity where Damian Priest has to break up with Judgment Day. Unless something happens with Drew McIntyre, he happens to win the Money in the Bank briefcase, and he does cash in on Damian Priest and takes the belt back. Or there's a screw job in there anyway. So whatever Damian Priest and Seth Rollins, what happens there, that kind of just changes everything by itself. It's like, I don't know what will happen, but I think something will come up that will change everything. So the fact that Damian Priest and Seth Rollins are facing each other, I think that'll be a non-factor when it comes to Drew McIntyre, and the fact that World Heavyweight Championship match is going to be hijacked by Drew McIntyre and CM Punk's storyline. At least that's what I think it's going to be. So in the Money in the Bank ladder match, I am of the opinion that, listen, I am in approval of Io Sky, Naomi, and Tiffany Stratton being in that ladder match. No question there. Leah Valkyria, they want to put a rocket on her back, and they want to make her the star that's going to be coming up in the way. I don't see it in her. I never saw it in NXT. I don't see it here. But for whatever reason, Leah Valkyria is still getting pushed. They let her win a Money in the Bank ladder qualifying match, and now she's in this match. They're going to make a big deal about having her in there, and she's going to get a chance to go up to the top of the ladder and maybe almost catch the briefcase. Then you'd add Zoe Stark, which I never saw the appeal of Zoe Stark necessarily. I think we were going to get somewhere when she was paired with Trish Stratus. I thought we were going to go somewhere, but that ended quickly. There was not much done for her. Like, Zoe Stark benefited nowhere from that. And her being paired up with Shayna Baszler doesn't really matter either. Chelsea Green getting into this match, and it's not Piper Niven this time, and Chelsea Green gets the fluke win. I don't know what they're going to do with Chelsea Green. Are they going to make her more than just a joke character now, if that's the plan? But in my opinion, Tiffany Stratton, I expect to be Money in the Bank winner. The real booking decision should be Tiffany Stratton. You didn't let her go far, anything with kicking in the ring, or it really was not a factor. You had the whole deal with Naomi and Bayley, and she was just kind of like just the third leg into that whole setup. But Tiffany Stratton should be the winner of the Money in the Bank ladder match. And she should have a long run carrying that briefcase. That's what I think should happen. Give her something to work with. So and honestly, Tiffy time, and let her decorate and accessorize the damn briefcase. Absolutely. Let's do that. As for the men's Money in the Bank ladder match, Carmelo Hayes feels like the same. The same issue I have with Leo Valkyria is the same issue I have with Carmelo Hayes. You haven't done anything with him, Carmelo Hayes, necessarily to win me over. Okay, so he wins a qualifier match and gets in. Meanwhile, the other stars you have in here, Jey Uso, Andrade, Chad Gable, LA Knight, Drew McIntyre, yeah. Totally approve. That booking's good for that Money in the Bank ladder match for that match. Sure. Absolutely. So it could very well be Drew McIntyre winning it and cashing it in right away. And I think they're going to do that. I do. Now, when it comes to the IC title, Sami Zayn and Braun Breaker, So Braun Breaker so far was given the squash push for a couple of weeks, a couple of months, maybe. And then him dominating over Ricochet on the way out and Ilya Dragunov. And now we're here, and they've had a whole setup with Braun Breaker and Sami Zayn at each other. Just some physicality, but that's pretty much it. Are we going to expect that on the main roster, what they've done with Braun Breaker so far will warrant him to become IC champion just like that? I mean, Sami Zayn, for what they've done with her and Chad Gable, with him and Chad Gable, I don't know. I'm like, when it comes to Sami Zayn, what they've done with him and Chad Gable, hasn't really done much for me, because the IC title was such a secondary thing when it came to Sami Zayn caring about the Alpha Academy because of his own personal dealings with the Bloodline and how he has to feel like he needs to go ahead and try to help those folks out that are underneath Chad Gable's thumb. I mean, whatever. But now we're at this point where I'm not saying that Braun Breaker shouldn't be able to go ahead and win the title. My problem is, how are you going to book him? It's going to be so quick to go ahead and put the title on him. And I'm going to just say this too. The NXT run as champion, I wasn't necessarily impressed with either for Braun Breaker. This is not a well-fleshed out, well-developed character yet. He's one-dimensional. But Braun Breaker could be made into something so much more. But they've done nothing. Like, he's not a Goldberg character. He's not a Ryback character. He's not even like a Braun Strowman character. He's got a spear and a temper. That's it. That's all he's got. You cannot just go ahead and just put the Steiner stigma on him, because most of your younger fan base really doesn't know about it. They don't put that connection together. You can't assume that what was happening on NXT and the run that he had over there constitutes what happens here and can be carried over. No, the main roster spot is a different spot, because there are plenty of people that do not watch the developmental. They only watch the main roster spots. And so when they see these people new and green, they're going to consider them green no matter how much time they had in NXT. It doesn't matter. And that's what it comes down to. Which is why I want to say with Tiffany Stratton, she's already made herself pretty much a name overnight. Something about her has already gotten her flair. Jade Cargill kind of got that feeling for her. By the way, why is it that all of a sudden, okay, I see Bianca Belair, who I saw on TikTok a couple times yesterday. She's in like incredible shape. Why is she not on TV? Jade and Bianca don't get a rematch. They lose to Alba Fire and Ala Dawn at Scotland. And we don't see these folks back. So there's a thought process that Jade Cargill, her green work in Scotland might have buried her a little bit, so they are keeping her off TV to get her more seasoning. But then but that's also at the hinder show of Bianca Belair, who's hula hooping on TikTok or wherever else she posts. I mean, good for her. I mean, the hell, she's like jamming along and hula hooping, and that's good. That's great. But damn it, we don't need to see Bianca Belair on my TikTok For You page. Let's put her on TV. She's a star. Listen, so much was well done with Bianca Belair. Under Vince's tutelage, by the way, before Vince was on the way out, before they got him booted out and the whole scandal with him came across, you cannot tell me that Bianca Belair wasn't really booked badly. She was booked great. Through the work that was being done, whoever was part of this, okay, 2021, 2022, her run out of NXT and coming up to that main roster, just like Rhea Ripley, made into a star. And when you lose Becky Lynch, why are you not putting Bianca Belair out there once again? Why is she in the backdrop right now? Why do you not have her on TV at all? Like, somebody help me understand this here. I mean, Bayley's champion, so like, there's nothing else they're going to have her been doing. But why is she in the Money in the Bank ladder match? Like, where's Bianca Belair? Why is she off TV? Is she just doing the TV show, and is she gonna be a mom? Like, what's going on here? Like, explain to me. Explain to me that. Why is it there's more TV time for Candice LeRae and Indy Hartwell than Bianca Belair? Why is Chelsea Green getting more airtime than Bianca Belair? Please, somebody explain this to me. B-Fab is getting more time than Bianca Belair. Blair Davenport is getting more time than Bianca Belair. Please explain that to me. I don't get it. She's not on this card. Okay. So that's what we already have so far. We got 5 matches set up. The 2 Money in the Bank ladder matches, the IC title, the World Heavyweight Championship, and the Cody and crew versus Bloodline. That's it. No women's titles on the line. I mean, that's all we got. So SummerSlam, we have to see what they're going to do in terms of what they're going to be building up for that. Fine. But my back to the matter is that, okay, they're missing out on a lot. They're kind of missing the idea of like who they have on their roster and who they can be working with. Like at this point right now, they're a little bit light on like people whose time should be out there and should be doing more. It's one of those things that I just kind of have to consider. Like somebody help me out with this. So AJ Styles, a little bit of a taken away. You know, he's off to the side after what he did. Bobby Lashley's on the shelf, so understandably, we can't see much of him. We see a whole lot of Johnny Gargano and Tommaso Ciampa, and now aren't they getting they're getting this on Friday Night SmackDown, getting a title shot. That's right, against Grayson Waller and Austin Theory. Pretty Deadly is back. I didn't ask for them. I didn't. Liv Morgan being completely consumed with Dominic Mysterio, and she has not defended the belt. I mean, she did on Monday night, but otherwise, you know, not much being said about that. And we don't hear much about anything with an opponent unless it's Rhea Ripley coming back. So they're just holding off on that as well. And I'm just trying to figure things out. There's so much going on right now that doesn't really do too much for me. The booking in many places are flat. When I look at how they're booking, and I am starting to create correlations to Bruce Pritchard booking in TNA in 2010, 2011, something is wrong. Something is seriously wrong. Do you understand this? Because I don't want it to be this way. I really don't. I hope in my heart of hearts that underneath the Bloodline storyline, which all people care about, Drew McIntyre, CM Punk, all the people care about, right? That the mid-card, they need to prepare for the future. And that future is going to be coming closer than you think. I mean, are we just going to expect that, okay, so Drew McIntyre, CM Punk, Cody Rhodes, Kevin Owens, Randy Orton, Seth Rollins, like the main veterans of the roster, they're just going to stay up there for another 5 years? Because that's how much time we're going to need to rebuild or to build some new stars from NXT to bring them up to the level of these other stars. Because they're not. The current mid-cards that are out there, they're not going to reach that level. Braun Breaker's going to need time. And among others, I mean, you're waiting for like factions to maybe come together and do something where there's probably need to be a couple of factions that need to get dropped. Final Day feuding with New Day, a Final Testament feuding with New Day, and you know that's completely a shot thing. Like what good is Final Testament? They couldn't even get Xavier Woods to come onto their fold. Like what is that all about? Oh man, let me tell you what. Like when I saw the beatdown of Kofi and Xavier, I thought Big E was going to come out from the back and come back from injury and be able to go ahead and make the save. That would have been the only thing that would have saved that storyline. Otherwise, this thing's done on arrival. DOA, what are we doing? Anyways. I want to take a few things that came away from Dynamite that were really good, because I did enjoy what they'd set up with Dynamite tonight. We get MJF making the heel turn back. This guy is our modern day Ric Flair. I'm all in for it. And of course, there was attention to detail because of the fact that, MJF confronted Daniel Garcia. Was it on Collision last Saturday, right? And it was in Buffalo, leading up to Daniel Garcia's match with Will Ospreay, of which Will Ospreay is coming off a loss, putting the international title on the line. And MJF offers a way for Daniel Garcia to go and win the match, of course, illegally, but he could have done it and gone to the dark side, but Daniel Garcia didn't. And so MJF, for whatever reason, decides to go and he sees something in Daniel Garcia as one of the pillars, one of the young stars on the up and coming, right? So this is MJF working with Daniel Garcia to kind of help build him up. And then you put him into the mix here. And when MJF had a faction, if somebody didn't do what he told him to do or suggested that he did, he turned on him. And, he took it out on him. And MJF now turned heel once again. Hey, I have no problem if he goes back to turn his heel. I really don't. He had his run as a face, and it worked out well. We're going to have to kind of make an explanation for the Undisputed Kingdom once they come back. But again, he got his revenge on the Undisputed Kingdom, I guess. Pretty much. So we're just moving along to this. MJF now will come out on Collision on Saturday night. By the way, the show's pre-taped. But we're going to see MJF start off Collision confronting the crowd at the start of Money in the Bank. I wonder if there's going to be any kind of rating to see MJF and what he says to start off that night, because that is interesting. They're going to book that. And then Hangman Adam Page returns back from injury, and he goes on against Jeff Jarrett. He's against the EVPs, and obviously wants to win the Owen, just like Bryan Danielson does. So you got that going for you. Britt Baker returns, and they get a nice start of heat where Mercedes Moné, if you didn't think she was heel yet, she's absolutely heel now. She's totally heel now. And Britt Baker looks amazing. I felt so sorry for her when she talked about her medical situation and feeling like that she was to the point of a mini stroke. I'm so glad that she's doing okay, and I'm so glad she's back because she's sorely missed. Listen, I love Toni Storm just as much as anybody else, but we need some other women on the roster to kind of come back and work with, okay? Willow Nightingale, awesome. Love her too. But let's get Britt Baker back in there, okay? I'm glad she's back. And let's get Britt and Mercedes Moné all in Wembley Stadium. Let's book that match. I'm all in for that. That sounds fantastic. So, among other things. And now we know that Willow Nightingale will face either Mariah May or Hikaru Shida in the finals of the Women's Own Heart Foundation tournament. And Willow Nightingale and Chris Statlander kind of heading each other off in their setup because of what was going on with the breakdown of that team and that friendship. Bryan Danielson will either take on Adam Page or D. White in the finals of the Men's Owen Hart Foundation tournament. Owen Hart Foundation tournament. That's good stuff. A good setup for all that. People might not be vibing too much of the learning tree. I still love it. I think what they did right now with Taz banning him from ringside, that was pretty crazy and wild, but yeah, it makes sense. Like now, Jericho's turning, he's getting demented into the learning tree character. I like it. I'm enjoying it. It's getting over to me. So maybe not everybody's out there into it, but I do like it. I do. So among other things I'm going to bring up, I don't know if I mentioned this at all, but congratulations to Selena De La Renta, who's expecting now. So I wish the best for her and, her new bundle of joy coming up and how she's going to use it in the storyline against Cesar Duran. What is it, the MLW anniversary's coming up. And I think that show's coming up. I forget, is it tonight or tomorrow? It's on YouTube. I got to go find out when it is, but that's coming up. I'm waiting for it to come pop up on my YouTube feed, but that'll be coming up soon enough. Oh, that's right. For Collision, they set up matches so far. So it'll be Adam Page and Jay White will be in the Men's Own Heart Foundation Tournament semifinal bout. That's for Collision. Tony Storm will take on Trish Adora. And there'll be other things going up after that, coming up for Collision. But again, they have everything set up. They're going to be doing it. Of course, it's been taped. But I'll probably have that on while I'm catching Money in the Bank this weekend. That'll be the plan on that. So if I didn't already say it before, let me give a final, again, predictions. I'm going to just say one more time to make sure everybody knows where I'm going to be coming from when it comes to this and what I expect this weekend, because it should be good. I will be doing a post show, kingofpodcasts.com. So you go and find that, and you'll catch me there, and we'll do it all over there. So remember, I say Damian Priest over Seth Rollins. Tiffany Stratton will win the women's Money in the Bank. Drew McIntyre will win the men's Money in the Bank, and we'll try to cash in that night. Braun Breaker will beat Sami Zayn. You know, they're going to probably pull it off. I don't know how they're going to do it, but they're going to do it. And Bloodline, if they're right in their minds, should beat Cody, Randy, and Kevin. Enjoy Money in the Bank. Come back this week for another Wrestlers World podcast, because wrestling needs us.